People who knew someone who died in a freak accident. What happened? When I was a 13-year-old boy, I witnessed my grandfather die. He was less than 15 feet away from me when he was decapitated by shrapnel from a broken piece of heavy farm equipment. I'm 50 years old and still struggle with that moment in time. PTSD can be a real bitch. My neighbor was cleaning his gutters and fell off his roof because he missed his footing when stepping. Fell right on his head. This was a few years back now, but the family moved quickly after, even though it had been their house for like 30 years. I can't say I blame them. A friend of a friend showed up at his girlfriend's apartment with a head wound. He didn't know how it happened. He also didn't know how he drove over there. She took him to the ER where he ended up passing away. He had his keys, wallet and phone on him. The only thing we could think of is he might have tripped, fell and hit his head in the wrong spot. A friend slipped and fell in the tub. Cracked his head. His roommate found him a half hour later. Died on the way to the hospital. A guy I knew was setting up a rope swing over a lake for his kids and their friends, which he had done many times before. He always would take a practice swing himself before he would let the kids go. His hand slipped off the rope and he fell before he was over the lake. He hit his head on a rock and died in front of the kids. Swimming, and one of my buddies was screwing with a great thing over a drain at the bottom. Got his foot stuck and couldn't extricate himself. His brother, cousin, and I nearly drowned trying to free him, so we got to watch him die. Haven't thought about this one in a bit. A friend of mine was riding his four-wheeler out at an off-road park. He kicked up a tree branch that impaled him in the thigh. He bled to death before anyone even knew it happened. A girl I went to grade school with was crushed under a Smith machine at a local gym. 24-hour gym, so no one was around to help. A guy I went to high school with was helping his family do some repairs to a silo on their family farm. The section of the silo's roofing gave way and in he went. Suffocated under thousands of pounds of grain. A mom went ice skating. Little slip, fell. All everyone saw was her bumper head lightly. Family finished skating. On the ride home, she started speaking gibberish. Dad dropped kids off the grandparents, took mom to the ER. Brain swelling, coma, dead a week later. There was a person at the beach who got impaled by a flying beach umbrella. Horrible situation. Her husband was right beside her and she died within seconds. My soul's aunt died of hypothermia. She went for a walk out in the hills in the winter. She knew the trail very well but got disoriented by a light snowfall and got lost. She got cold and tired, lay down by a rock and died of hypothermia. She was 100 yards from her car. Guy I knew was driving a tractor trailer with a stack of pipe on the back. He swerved to avoid an accident after a car cut him off, went into the ditch, and was cut in half when the load was propelled forward by the inertia from the sudden stop. A guy I went to HS with got hit by a train. It wasn't suicide. It was before Uber and he had been at a party drinking. He did the responsible thing by taking the subway. When he heard the train coming, he stood up to take a step forward like everyone does, but was so drunk that he stumbled over his own feet and fell onto the track. A cousin of mine was electrocuted by a Dr. Pepper machine. His 2 children received $60,000 that the year mom lost on bingo. Childhood friend of mine drowned. His leg got trapped swimming in a relatively shallow river. He went down and just never came back up. It happened to one of the nicest people I ever knew, and it makes me so mad that we lost touch before I found out what happened. My insurance guy was pulling a limb out of a large tree with a chain and a rope. He was behind the pickup, his wife was driving the truck. Rope snapped from the strain and chain snapped back and hit him in the head, killing him instantly. He was in his 50s. Nice guy, too. Ironic thing is, this is exactly the sort of scenario he would describe as to why you need life insurance. Guy was working on his car, the brake failed, and his head was crushed by the wheel. The tire was off at the time. Had a classmate who was working outside. Got stung by a wasp and had an allergic reaction and died less than 24 hours later. He was married 7 months. They were working on starting a family. His wife had to make a final decision as he was completely brain dead. Former co-worker of mine was gored by a bison while on a trail run. Ironically, he often posted on message boards for the park to be aware of wild animals while there, and in one post he said there are too many people with headphones on, or trying to get too close to the bison to take selfies. He was normally very careful apparently. My childhood friend later, as an adult, felt his death in Acadia National Park when he fell off a cliff attempting to get a nice picture. A friend of my dad's was overseeing a repaired braided 3/4 cable being spooled from one drum to another at very high speed and tension. He had his gloved hand loosely on the wire guiding it into position, a big no-no in the industry. Afraid Dwyer came through, snagged his glove and dragged him into the drum, wrapping him into a contorted paste within seconds. He was shortstop in the high school baseball game. Other team hits the ball. Ball hits my friend square in the chest. His heart stopped. They tried to do CPR, but he was gone before the ambulance got there. Guy I knew from school recently died from a sinus infection that spread to his brain. He was a primary school teacher and a recent father. I don't know if it's a freak accident, or an expected one. A guy I knew in HS was in the hatchback area of his small car, with 4 other guys who were in the seats. They had a crash with another car. Everyone in both cars was killed, and everyone in both cars was drunk. The guy I know, in the hatchback, was cut in half. A family friend bumped his head, walked about 15 feet across his backyard, sat at his picnic table and died. Autopsy showed no head trauma, but he broke his neck when he hit his head. They figured the walk across the yard caused something to shift enough to do fatal damage to his spinal cord. Friend's brother accidentally got caught in the back of his dumpster truck and was crushed in the trash compactor. This sadly happened only a couple of years after their mom was hit by a car and killed. My student's dad is a fisherman. One of his workers was leaning over on their boat grabbing something when the boat made a sudden movement and he hit his head and died. Got a tongue piercing. That same night, took a sleeping pill to sleep. Choked on his tongue which was swollen from the piercing. She slipped in the shower and died instantly on her first week in boarding high school. She was a classmate deskmate in primary school. I always had regrets that I did little to help her speak out as she was bullied in primary school or get a chance to apologize for the many times I looked the other way. Was putting up decorations in the barn, getting ready for a wedding. Apparently something up there was in the way and he decided it needed to be cut off, so he took a chainsaw up the ladder to do it. Lost his balance and fell off the ladder while holding the chainsaw. Whole family died of CO poisoning in an RV. If I remember correctly, it was from a cooking appliance. Quite tragic. My good friend's sister was on a beach with friends, when whatever way or area they were walking in, caused a sand dune to collapse. The poor girl unfortunately was only stood in the exact wrong place at the wrong time, since all her friends were able to pull themselves out, but they didn't get her out in time. Friend from high school was driving a pickup with his friend and girlfriend in the car. Front spring snapped, causing them to roll over in the oncoming traffic. The driver and passenger both died. The person in the middle bench seat was unharmed. After reading all of that, I can say it's scary that you can lose your life potentially any moment, and that might be not your fault at all. Literally makes me want to stay home 24/7. A family member highly allergic to bees is swarmed by them and jumps into the water to escape them. Turns out it was an immediate 30-foot drop as the pond was an old quarry. They couldn't swim and drowned. My Uncle Mike got in a heated dispute with someone who bought a boat from him and stopped making payments. During the altercation he got super worked up. By the time it got physical, he had a heart attack mid-fight and died. Knew someone who was on a date walking through downtown. Suddenly their date was crushed by someone who jumped off the high-rise building they were walking past. Their date died instantly, as did the person who landed on them. A girl in my orchestra class in 7th grade passed away with her siblings and dad. The dad was flying them in a private plane, I forget to where. They crashed into a mountain. In 3rd grade we were standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and one kid did that prank where you move someone's chair so if they go to sit down without looking they fall down. The kid that was pranked hit his head just right and wound up dying. 5th grader was playing by standing on the counter next to the window while teacher was out of the room. Kids were screaming and yelling and this kid was dancing next to the window. He twirled around with one leg out and his leg went through the window and cut an artery. He bled out in the nurse's room. Never had a chance. This was the early 70s in rural area. My uncle was refilling a Zippo lighter, while smoking. Somehow it caught fire. He set himself on fire. He was in the bathroom. He tried to reach the shower. The extreme flammable shower curtain caught on fire and he inhaled large amounts of toxic smoke. He died a few days later, mainly from lung issues and not so much from the burns. Had a buddy who was homeless at the time. Was asleep in a dumpster overnight and the trash truck picked up the dumpster and crushed everything. Him included. One of my coworkers tripped over this tiny step and died. Went into cardiac arrest. For what we knew she was relatively healthy, mid-30s early 40s. Sad shit. One of my friends when I was a freshman in high school drowned. While nobody knows for certain, as he was alone when this happened, it was gathered that he slipped by the pool and knocked the wind out of himself. Then he went under and probably gasped for air only to inhale water. First and only time I was at a funeral for someone my age. My brother fainted suddenly. He hit his head on concrete and never regained consciousness. We had to make the decision to remove his life support and donate his organs. He was 44. R.I.P. Chris Hart. This happened a long time ago, but a neighbor was trying to weld a gas tank and didn't realize that he should have filled it with water beforehand. The tank exploded and killed him. One of my dad's good friends was driving a four-wheeler and it rolled over on top of him. He was wearing a helmet, but the handlebars of the ATV pushed through the visor on his helmet, crushing his skull. Kid I went to HS with. Came from a wealthy family, but was interested in making his own way. Got a good factory job right out of high school. First week on the job, an old pipe comes out of its supports on the ceiling, swings down, pins him to a wall, and kills him. He was standing in the worst possible spot. 18 years old, really bad luck. My second cousin had a medical incident while in the driver's seat of his truck and fell out onto the driveway. The car rolled back and cut him almost in half. We just had his funeral last week. Electric accident, they were supposed to be careful but burned into charcoal. A reminder to all that electricity is very dangerous. My best friend was struck by a car when we were 16. His brain was so badly damaged he was in a vegetative state for a couple years before passing. Whole thing fucked me up pretty bad. Nearly 3 decades ago, my best family friend's sister was arguing with her boyfriend on a sheet of ice over a big river. She stepped on the wrong spot, broke the ice, and fell into the water's current, which took her along with it.